Hi there, I'm Wendy McCallum, burnout and alcohol coach and wellness expert, and you're listening to Bite-Size Balance, where everyday extraordinary women share their stories, expertise, and wisdom, all in the name of lifting each other up and creating a better life by design. Whether it's wellness, career, relationships, food, alcohol, mindfulness, hormones, or parenting, we talk about all things women's balance. If your life looks great on paper, but it still feels like something's missing, you're in the right place. Welcome to Bite-Size Balance.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Bite-Size Balance. I have one of my favorite people who has been a guest on the podcast before, back again. Hi, Anne Dowsett Johnston.
Hello, Wendy.
So great to have you back. So let me introduce Anne, and then we're going to get into the conversation. We have a really important topic today to discuss. And I hope that everybody who listens to this podcast listens to this episode, whether or not they're at a place where they're questioning their relationship with alcohol. It's just really important information. And we're not trying to terrify people today, and we're not the anti-drinking police. That's not at all what we're doing. We just think that everybody deserves the right to make an informed choice around their habits. And this is an area where things have changed drastically. And there's new information that everybody needs to know. And so we're going to talk about that. So Anne Dowsett Johnston is an award-winning journalist and the best-selling author of one of my favorite books about alcohol, especially women and alcohol. It's called Drink: The Intimate Relationship Between Women and Alcohol, a book named one of the top 10 of the year by the Washington Post. Anne is now a psychotherapist, and she is my friend, and she's also my writing coach. So we'll probably talk a little bit about that. So when we had Anne on last season, we were talking about writing as a form of recovery and the value of writing, and then also talking about, creativity in midlife and all kinds of different things. Today, we're going to be focusing more on a specific social, political topic, but we will talk about the writing piece too. So today, Anne is joining me to talk about the new alcohol consumption guidelines that were released in mid-January in Canada by the Centre on Substance Use and Addiction, which replaced the 2011 low-risk drinking guidelines. And they're really very different. There's been a huge shift. So Anne, do you want to start by just talking about where we were and where we are now with these guidelines? What's changed?
Yes, in 2011, when Health Canada announced the last low-risk drinking guidelines, I broke that story in the Toronto Star, and people were appalled because it said only 10 measured drinks for women and 15 for men per week. People were shocked at the time. They did their counting of what do I drink Friday night, Saturday night, throughout the week, and thought only 10 for women, very low. And that would be classically a 5-ounce glass of wine. Mm-hmm. So what happened in January, right in the middle of dry January, the new guidelines came out and really have people's heads in a spin, because it's 2 measured drinks, not 10 for women, 2 and for men. Per week. And above that, your risk for cardiovascular issues and cancers goes up, to say nothing of violence. So 3 to 6 a week, and you're in some kind of trouble. Beyond that, you're in real trouble. This has really landed hard.
Yeah. I was actually saying this week, I've been saying this to a number of clients, because a lot of my clients have been bringing this information. And, I work with women, some of whom are not drinking anymore, some of whom are trying to stop drinking, some of whom, it's on their radar, but it's not their primary thing. And I've heard from a lot of different women in the last couple of weeks since these new guidelines were released, because they've really it's kind of great how much media this has gotten. So they've gotten press in the States, they've gotten press globally, and I work with women all over the world. And I've heard many women say, if they are not drinking now, even if they're in the early days of not drinking, thank God I'm not drinking, because this is scary. And I have said, I've reflected back on how I would have felt if I was still drinking the way I was drinking 5 years ago and these guidelines had been released. I was already up every night freaking out about drinking and everything else going on in my life with anxiety. I would have just been consumed by this. Because it's a shocking change. So when Anne's talking about the 1 to 2 standard drinks a week, she's talking about what's considered now low risk drinking. So really the advice is that Only when people have 0 drinks a week are there no health risks. But low risk drinking now is 2 drinks maximum a week for women or men. And that's a 5-ounce glass of wine typically, or like a beer, like a 12-ounce serving of beer, right? Am I right?
You're totally right.
Yeah. So the moderate risks guide, the sort of moderate risk area now is 3 to 6 drinks a week, which is way less than the, just way less than it was before. And then of course, anything over 7 or more is considered high risk drinking. And I think a lot of people were operating before this as though 7 drinks a week was like, okay, right? Like 1 drink a week. And I remember doing that. I mean, I don't know if you did, Anne, when you were still drinking, but like doing that math all the time. Like
All the time.
if I don't drink like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, then I can have like these drinks and I'll be under. I mean, honestly, I was never under the 7 ever under that. But anyway, I've been reflecting on that, on how stressful this would be for people potentially who had, those people who were already thinking about their relationship with alcohol and wondering if they were drinking too much, but also this huge group of people who probably haven't given it much of a second thought.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think that it's, as you say, it's had enormous global coverage because Canada really is a leader here. And Canada has gone further and said that they advise 3 things. Absolutely drink labeling, meaning how many drinks are in a bottle, standard drinks are in a bottle, warning labels, which are really sending the alcohol industry into a tizzy, as you can appreciate. And then pressing on the 3 big levers that change the way the public drinks, and those are marketing, availability, and pricing. So Canada is seeing a real slap down the gauntlet. Let's make change. No coincidence that some of the biggest brains in alcohol research policy in the world live in Canada, work out of Canada. We are a hub of big brain activity on this subject. So this has been years in the making. Amazing it landed. Amazing that they're being so bold. No surprise the science is there. It's been there for a long time. I reported the breast cancer connection in my book in 2013. I also reported that the myth that red wine was good for your health was indeed a myth. But the public didn't absorb that. We like to think that a glass of wine is like vitamin D. We like to think that if 1 glass of red wine is good for us, maybe 2 is better. And so it has people, there's been some pushback in the sense of you're getting people overly worried, you're getting people in a tizzy, and the public, the clients that I have are saying, I just can't do that.
Right. I just can't do 2 drinks a week, you mean?
I can't.
Yeah. So and this is where I wanted to try to provide some hope and some positivity on this topic, because I know lots of women are feeling that way. And frankly, this is the first time I felt comfortable talking about this in a really factual way, like a really honest way about the risks. I'm always afraid to do that because I don't want to ever appear to be sort of like the alcohol police, like I said, or fear mongering or any of that. But it's out there now, and it wasn't me that put it out there. And so I feel like it's the perfect time to talk about this in a really candid, honest way, but also let women know, and men, but it's mostly women listening to this podcast, let women know that it is, and I've said this so many times, but I feel like this is just like the perfect time to say this. It's totally okay if it's hard to cut back, even if you don't consider yourself to be a problematic drinker or an alcoholic. Like, it's such an incredibly addictive substance, and it is so socially, it's just so socially rooted and acceptable and it's not even acceptable, it's promoted. It's the norm. I mean, I have to justify my decision to not drink. And I think we make the assumption that it should be easy to cut back if we're not addicted or an alcoholic. If we don't accept those labels or put ourselves in those categories, this should be easy. And I'm here to say that is not true. I work with women across the gray area drinking spectrum, women who drink a few drinks a week, women who drink a bottle plus of wine every night. And it can be just as difficult in either of those extremes to change the way you drink. So I just want to say that. And there's so much support out there for you. And one of the things that I hope happens as a result of these guidelines is that more women feel okay asking for help around this and saying, like, look, these guidelines came out. I'm definitely not drinking in a low risk way. It's really stressful for me. I want to change it, but every time I try, I just end up drinking. There's so much support and help out there. And I mean, it's not just me. There are so many of us doing this who are really passionate about helping women drink less. I just went on a little diatribe there. Apologies. But
no, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. It's never been easier to find help and support and community or your tribe to cut back, to get sober. So that part I think is really interesting. And like you, I'm no prohibitionist. I enjoyed alcohol when I consumed alcohol. I think there are many people who can handle it. God bless them. I wasn't one of those people. So I think it's really important to say that.
Yeah, and I think it's important to say alcohol behaves the same way in everyone's brains. So, you know, you can't get away from that. And that's why it's hard to change your drinking, whether you're drinking just, you know, a drink every day or you're drinking more than that, or even less than that, frankly. It's because it sets off a cascade of neurochemical events in your brain, no matter who you are and how much you drink. And that in itself can make it really difficult to drink less.
Yes. And I think that, as we both know, I think it bears some exploration, is that the notion of alcohol as a decompression tool for women who are carrying all the emotional labor, or a lot of the emotional labor, for running families, for having weathered the last 3 years, especially, who do 2 and 3 shifts in life. It has, I'm trying to buy a birthday card for a woman that doesn't make a joke about alcohol or wine, or it must be wine o'clock somewhere. I collect them. I've got right behind me in a drawer a onesie for a baby that says, I'm the reason my mommy drinks wine. I mean, just it is the memes. It's everywhere. It's surround sound messaging that this is how you decompress. So how do you take that culture and all of a sudden say, by the way, 15% of breast cancer cases are attributable to alcohol consumption. Only 5% of Canadian women know that fact. So the data's there, science supports it, but women don't want to know or don't know, and we have to connect the dots. So it's really a huge ripping off of the Band-Aid. The messaging that you were told is not true.
Yeah. And I want to say to anyone who's listening who's freaking out about that, because that is actually a very big statistic. So, you know, one of the things that I'm hearing and I'm seeing on like comments on people's posts about these new guidelines and stuff is this idea of like, well, everything causes cancer. You're just going to take away you're just going to not do anything. This is not everything. The statistics associated with alcohol are very significant and very real. And so that argument holds zero weight, in my opinion. It's just a garbage argument. This is a completely different situation. It's a class 1 carcinogen, and we need to start recognizing it as such. And you know, that the work involved in changing the social messaging that's out there, the social norms around alcohol, is significant, but it starts with women. And here we go on my little patriarchal rant. You know me, Anne, I like to just throw a little dig in at the patriarchy. I just like to remind women regularly that the people sitting at the boardroom tables of big alcohol are not women. I'm sure there are a few, but statistically, we know how many CEOs are women. We know how many C-suite people are female, and it's not very many. So the people making these decisions around marketing and labeling and whether we should be getting the information and, you know, really feeding this I don't even know what you call it, but this zeitgeist around women and drinking and how it's our, you know, it's the perfect way for us to cope. And we need it. Not only is it the way to cope, we actually need it to parent. That's the messaging really bothers me. Like, we can't do this without alcohol. That is coming from men. That gets me angry. This makes me really, really angry. And I loved, you said something last time. I hope you'll say it again. I'm not going to put the words in your mouth, but you said something about like what that messaging is doing for women in terms of where it's keeping them. Do you remember?
Yeah, my strong feeling is it's keeping us in the kitchen drinking wine. It basically saying we are disempowered. We are disempowered when we drink for the most part. So let's just do a quick history lesson. I will make this painless as possible, and it's fascinating. In the mid 1990s, all the Johnny Walker drinkers were dying out. The spirits business looked at beer and said, beer's cleaning our clock, we're in trouble. And they invented the little alcopops aimed at teenage girls. Cocktails.
What's an alcopop? What's an alcopop?
Alcopop is like Mike's Hard Lemonade, Smirnoff Ice, nice and sweet, prepackaged spirits in a little bottle, convenient for teenage girls to say, you don't like beer, because young girls do not like beer. This is going to get you prepared for the wine and wine with cute names. This is going to get you prepared to drink. So university is not the beginning of drinking, but it is the ramping up of drinking. So guess what? Smirnoff's profits went up 66% in 2 years. It was a hit. It was an experiment, and it was a hit. And a lot of those guys at the table, and they were mostly guys, came from, guess what? The tobacco industry. And they had a hit on their hands, and thus we were acculturated to drinking. So all of a sudden, when we got to university, the guys drinking beer were drinking shots. We're 2/3 their size. We probably didn't eat before we went out on a date because we don't want the calories. We practiced heavy drinking, risky drinking, and we all know what that leads to. End of my rant, end of my history lesson. So we basically told a generation of women, don't bother stopping after university. This is excellent for you. Just work and go home to your kitchen and unwind. And in poof, that's what happened. And there is a change in behavior. So what do we see? We see emergency room presentations on the part of women in North America outpacing those of men in the past few years. Sadly, everything I said in my book in 2013, forecasting women catching up to men or outpacing them, has come true.
Yeah, I know. It's a
tragedy.
It is a complete tragedy. And honestly, I don't think I've ever spoken about it this candidly before. The recommended maximum number of drinks in one day now is 2. So that basically puts a whole category of drinkers in a place of panic. So anyone who's a binge drinker, which is 4 drinks or more at a time for women, in a sitting for women, which is a huge group of women. In fact, I was a binge drinker before I was a regular drinker. I would binge drink on the weekends with girlfriends, or, we'd go out, we'd have dinner, whatever. I'd have, 4+ drinks for sure over the course of the evening, but I wasn't drinking regularly at night anymore. Or yet at that point. And that sort of shifted for me as I got older, and I, kind of was less of a partier and more of a mom. But there are an awful lot of people who fall into that category of binge drinking. And even the 4 drinks in a sitting, like in an evening, feels very low to a lot of people when I talk about that. And now it's been reduced. It's been slashed in half. It's 2 drinks. More than that is now problematic in one sitting. As you were talking, I was thinking about the people who are probably freaking out about this, as I've been thinking about them for the last month, and also hearing from them in the work that I do. And I just wanted to say, hopefully this is helpful, but it's always very painful and uncomfortable when you become aware of a problem. It's the worst part. The worst part is when you recognize this isn't where you're not where you want to be, or something's not serving you, or maybe you now know something that you didn't know before, and that's got you kind of panicky, like in this case. It's always the most uncomfortable part, but you can't make change without awareness. So it's a necessary part of making change. And I would suggest, if you're someone who's kind of like, ooh, I'm above these guys, this is not good, I need to make some changes, I don't know where to start, I'm sort of panicking and spinning out, try to celebrate the fact that you now have this information. because now you can take that and you can take the steps necessary to make change. And if you need support and help with that, just reach out to me. I might not be the right person for you, but I can steer you in the direction of someone who is. But instead of like getting super panicky and just spiraling out into anxiety on this, see this as a gift. The gift is finally, the blinders have been removed. The blinders that we had very little control over have been removed. And it is now out there and clear. And now we get to make change, and like when I said before that it is in the hands of women. I truly believe that. The first thing you can do is stop sharing the memes. Stop sharing them. You don't need to go on a rant on social media. I don't do that. You don't see me ranting on social media. I will be honest on there, but I'm not ranting about this and ranting about big alcohol. I think the most power we have is to just stop sharing this stuff. Just stop making the memes, stop sharing the memes, stop laughing at the memes, stop liking the memes. Just ignore them, because we have a ton of power there. We're the ones who are sharing those memes. It's not men sharing the memes. It's us, because we've bought into this belief that was perpetrated by men and suggested to us by men and is constantly being put into our brains through the other marketing that's happening, that we need this thing.
So true.
Yeah.
It's not funny. It's like not laughing at a sexist joke. I agree with you. Stop sharing the memes.
Yeah.
It isn't amusing.
No, nothing funny about them. I mean, that little onesie that you have, I remember standing in a store. My son is 19. I remember standing in a store 19 years ago and considering buying that exact onesie, thinking that was really funny, having a laugh with my husband. I remember exactly where I was. Mommy drinks because you cry.
Amazing.
That was the onesie thing. So this has been around for a long time, but it has really picked up speed in the last 10 years with all of these like specific drinks now being marketed at women and mothers. And
exactly.
They're going in with the it's not just the mummy drink thing. It's also they're also directing these at women, at the other whole area of patriarchal garbage, which is weight loss, the weight loss industry. So they've like now combined these two things. So they're marketing these as like skinny martinis and skinny girl wine and all of this stuff. So they're just really coming at us from all angles here, but we don't have to take it. We can stop sharing the memes. We can stop buying into this. We now have the information and we get to make informed choices. And again, it's your choice. I'm not here to tell anyone not to drink. Even as a coach, I say that to my clients. It's not my job to tell you whether to drink or not drink. I'm just here to make sure that you're at least making an informed decision. Because I think a lot of people thought they were making an informed decision before, and they were doing the best they could because those were the guidelines. But they've shifted now. So I'm hoping that anyone who's really gotten freaked out over this in the last few weeks and is really worried about their drinking and has probably been trying to make changes and has been struggling with that and wondering why it's so hard, and just take a breath and recognize, like, first of all, of course it's hard. Of course it's hard. If this was easy, we would all not drink. That's the truth of it. We just wouldn't drink. And second of all, it's really great that you know that you want to change something, because without that, you wouldn't make any progress. You wouldn't be able to make the change. Can you go back to the 3 levers? Because you mentioned those and I thought, okay, so one was, you said the 3 big levers that the marketing industry, that the alcohol industry uses are, I got marketing and pricing, and I can't remember the other one.
So marketing is enormous. And that horse is out of the barn because, as we know, any 14-year-old can sit down and Google Seagrams, for instance, or their favorite kind of alcohol. And age gating is supposed to freeze them out because they're under 18 or 21, but anybody can lie. So that horse is out of the barn. Marketing is surround sound messaging, wallpaper.
Yeah.
Second one is pricing. And we have had more or less a monopoly in Canada. So We are kind of one of the poster kids in the global block on pricing. But you go to somewhere in the States and you can find vodka that is almost cheaper than water. You go to the UK and it's cheaper than milk. It's sold in gas stations. So pricing is really a big deal, and availability. So we've seen the move into corner stores. We've seen the move into grocery stores. As I said, gas stations, it's everywhere. Alcohol is everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's seen as, I argue that it's wine anyway, seen as a food group. We don't see it as a drug. And in Canada, it is our favorite drug. 79% of Canadians 15 and over drink. We love alcohol. Kills more people than opioids. The opioid crisis is nothing to sneeze at. I know that, but alcohol kills more people in North America.
Alcohol actually kills more people than all prescription and non-prescription drugs combined.
Yeah, it's not what they did a study a few years ago and asked the Canadian public, and everybody got the answer wrong.
Yeah. Well, I would have. I only know that statistic because of the work that I do. But that I remember learning that, looking at the harm scale, like the harm scale research and all of that, and thinking, this is bonkers.
It's bonkers.
This is bonkers. Yes, we absolutely have other crises around drugs, no doubt about it. But the fact that we're just completely blind to the fact that this drug is actually the most harmful drug, is really frustrating to me. Again, it takes me back to that whole place of anger, and I wasn't an angry person before menopause, and I don't know what happened.
Me too.
I'm not sure I ever even used the word patriarchy before I went into menopause, but it's been on the tip of my tongue over the last couple of years. But it makes me really, really frustrated. Can we talk about labeling? So there are two different aspects, I guess, of labeling. There's the making sure people understand how many servings are actually in a bottle of wine, because certainly when I was drinking, I could convince myself I'd only had 2 glasses of wine, but of course I was filling those massive big bowly type wine glasses. And now I know that I was probably drinking more like 4 to 6 servings of wine in those 2 glasses. So I think that would be a very helpful step to make it clear how many glasses of wine are actually in a bottle of wine. Yeah. And also probably change things like at restaurants. One of the things that bothers me at restaurants is do you want a 6 ounce or a 9 ounce? It's like, what just actually would like a normal glass of wine, which is 4 or 5 ounces. But they, that upsell question, I fell for it. I did it every time. I'd get the 9 ounce. If I wasn't driving, I'm like, oh, for sure, I'll have the 8 ounce or the 9 ounce, whatever your big one is that you're offering. But that bothers me. So that's one aspect of it, getting clear on how many servings are in a bottle. And it blows my mind that that is not already happening. I get the resistance from the alcohol. I get the resistance from big alcohol on that. The second piece of it is the warning labels.
Right.
And there was a pilot project that ran in Canada around, do you want to talk about that? Can you speak to that?
Yes, it ran in the Yukon. Uh-huh. And it was very interesting for several months, and it showed that it did have an effect on people's drinking habits. Didn't reduce it substantially, but reduced it enough that people were paying attention. It was, as I said, a pilot project, and big alcohol shut it down. So what do we need to know? We need to know that the alcohol industry is extremely powerful, extremely deep pockets, and they give across party lines. And so what's fascinating is that in the United States, in Congress, for every member of Congress, there are 2 alcohol lobbyists.
Wow.
Working the scene. Think about that.
Wow.
Don't need to know much more. So we have in the UK, the Portsmouth Group, which sounds like a wonderful, worthy group of right-minded people. In fact, it's all fueled by the alcohol industry. So you have to be really careful if you look at research and find out who actually funded the research. And I blame my own former profession, journalists, for falling for the fact that alcohol is good for your health, for using a megaphone to get that message out. And follow the money as we always do. And it's true that most of the businesses I worked for took a goodly amount of their income from the alcohol industry. So it's all mucky.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mucky. You
Wow.
have to consider the source. So this is a terrible wake-up call for most Canadians and for people beyond Canada, because people are really watching what we're doing. We're at the forefront. It's huge. It's huge news, and I think it's going to take a generation, maybe less, but like smoking, a generation for people to change their behavior because there's such pushback.
Yeah, it's interesting. You and I were talking about that before we hit record. And my view on that is that it will definitely not happen overnight, because I'm already seeing all of the news coverage that's coming out from this. And you have these two factions, right? As with everything, it's sort of like black and white. And you have a number of people who are maybe health professionals or who are in the alcohol-free sober world or whatever, who are saying this is so great, yay, yay, yay. And then you have people who are saying things like, yeah, this probably isn't going to change the way that I drink. And, if I, changed things every time somebody told me something was bad for me, I'd have no fun. And I think that'll continue. My hope is that we have changed as a society, that there has been a shift as a society since smoking became a big thing. My hope is that, and then this is because I'm in the wellness world and I see this, I think women generally are more concerned with their overall health. I mean, people are concerned with what they're eating. There's more of a focus on that now. If not necessarily, not talking about weight loss, I'm talking about eating fruits and vegetables, making sure the food they're eating isn't highly processed, avoiding, artificial additives and ingredients that don't serve them and that they know are maybe not so good for them, and exercising and incorporating mindfulness in their lives, and, sleeping better, and all of these things that we talk about on this podcast all the time. So my hope is that this will take less time. I also think if we can just get women fired up about the whole bias against women and how we've been hoodwinked by this male-dominated industry, that might speed this thing up. Because smoking was a male, it was kind of a male-driven, I don't know the statistics on that, but I know that when smoking became a thing, it was more of a man's thing than a woman's thing. Like, probably same as alcohol. And then there was a shift over with Virginia Slims and all the rest of it at marketing directly at women. Anyway, I hope this changes faster. But again, I just want to say to anyone who's listening who feels like, oh, you know what, I never would have considered myself someone who might want to think about how I was drinking, but now I'm sort of starting to do that as a result of reading these guidelines or listening to this podcast. Like everything I talk about, you guys, on all these podcasts about alcohol applies to you. So just go back and listen to those podcasts. There's so much information out there on how to start working on changing your relationship with alcohol and drinking less. And as I said, it's okay if it's hard to do that on your own. Most people can't do it on their own, but there are lots of mindset shifts and things that you can start doing that are actually going to help make that easier. And again, there's so much free information out there on all of these previous podcast episodes I've done, and also just generally out there in the on the interwebs, and go and look for that. Don't be afraid to ask for help here. I mean, you'd pay for a trainer if you wanted to get in shape at the gym. You'd hire a nutritionist if you needed help with your food. Because all of those things are hard to do. Making habit change is hard for humans. And the thing is that for the average woman, we have a neural pathway that we have been walking for decades around alcohol, which is based on the best information we had, which was 7 drinks-ish a week is okay. Even a few more than that, you can probably get away with. That's certainly what I thought. And now we have new information. So we can't expect ourselves to just suddenly flip over to another neural pathway where we only drink 2 drinks a week or less and have that be easy. That's just not how the brain works. Like, it takes time, it takes practice, it takes support. So this is an important piece of wellness, in my opinion. How much you drink is a piece of your wellness. And just like how much you smoke or how much, sugar you eat or how little you exercise or how poor your sleep is or how much time you spend on stress management. All of those things are important wellness pieces. And you would go get support on the other ones. So ask for support around this if it's a struggle. You don't need to call yourself an alcoholic. I don't. You don't need to identify as a problem drinker. It doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is it's causing you stress and you don't like where you are with it. And you want to change it. That's it.
Right.
On that note, Anne, do you think that this is going to lead to the normalization of being a non-drinker eventually in Canadian society? Because, nobody asks me why I don't smoke, but I get asked, not that often, to be honest, anymore, because it's been 5 years, but I certainly did get asked, and I have been asked, why don't you drink? People ask that regularly. Oh, you don't drink? How come? So do you think this is going to have an impact on that, just that stigma that's associated with choosing to not drink?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, I hope so.
I think it's never been easier to be sober. I got sober. I'm in my 15th year of sobriety, and I can tell you that the non-alcohol options and the welcome that you get from in a restaurant to make a mocktail has never been higher. Mm-hmm. I know that the sobriety support and the sobriety groups is wide and various now. You don't have to just go to the 12-step option, which right. is really what it was like when I got sober. But I think mostly, just as you were saying, that we can say, I don't eat sugar, or I don't, I need to leave this party because my sleep is important to me. I think in the name of health, people are going to be a lot more open to this choice.
Yeah.
And I think that the pressure to drink should come off.
Yeah, I hope so too. I just thought of something. I don't know why I didn't think of this before, but if there's anyone listening who's looking for support and wants to do a self-guided option, so wants to keep it private and work on it themselves, let me know. Send me an email. I have a course that I offer as a self-guided option that I can hook you up with. And I also wanted to say, I just thought of this. In just going back to the whole stop sharing the memes thing, the algorithms are so crafty. But so they if you click like on one thing, your whole feed. Right now, my best friend Megan, who you sort of know tangentially through knowing me, she told me yesterday that she's currently being flooded with images and posts about pregnancy, and she's 52. So she's like, I don't know what I clicked on when, but my thread is just being bombarded with these images of pregnant women and information about how to get pregnant. Oh, anyway, the good thing about that, though, the craftiness of the algorithm, is that it will also notice if you stop sharing, stop liking, stop clicking on stuff. And I will say that my feed, for example, on Instagram, is completely clear of anything to do with alcohol. You also, by the way, can go in and ask to not see ads about alcohol. So a lot of people don't know that, but you can go in on Facebook, and I suspect it's there on Instagram too. I haven't actually investigated it, but I know that on Facebook you can go in and you can actually select what kinds of ads you don't want to see. And one of them is alcohol, which I think is interesting. So I don't see them. I don't see the stuff on that anymore, which makes it, I think you're sending a message, right? You vote with these likes and these clicks now. It's like the equivalent of what I used to say when I coached around food, which was that every time you go to the grocery store, you're voting. You're voting on what kind of food system you want. You're voting on all kinds of things. And the same thing's happening now with social media. The things you choose to share, the things you click, the things you like, that's a vote. So just be careful what you're voting for. But also recognize the power that we have to vote differently and the impact that might have. So one last thing, Anne, that I just thought of as you were talking about something is that, and this is just sort of for anybody who's listening, who's not concerned about their drinking and isn't, these guidelines didn't freak them out, which great. I'm so happy for you, because I know how many people are probably going to be a little stressed about this, or maybe more than a little stressed. Something that just to keep in mind that you can do is you can start trying to support other women differently. So as a host, you can make sure you always have alcohol-free options available. I mean, I have this just gorgeous friend who may be listening to this episode, who's in my book club. And my other book club people do this too, but I was just at her house for book club, and she had like a variety of mixed, like she had several different options of cool, kind of adult alcohol-free beverages that I could choose from. And I just thought that was so sweet. And I think we need to start doing that more. And this is part of normalizing that conversation. If you choose to drink, that's fine. Again, I'm not here to tell anybody to drink or not drink, but I do think you need to start, at the very least, we need to start recognizing that there are many people who are going to be trying to drink less as a result of these new guidelines, which is a good thing. And it's very, very helpful to support them. And the two, I think, obvious ways you can support is this. So making sure that you're providing alcohol-free options. And the second one is to not push alcohol on anyone. So just start paying attention to how often you're saying things to people like, oh, come on, just have one, or, asking people about their decision to not drink. There are hundreds of reasons why women don't drink. Hundreds. They're pregnant. They're trying to get pregnant. They're, they've got a cancer diagnosis and they don't want to be drinking, some other illness. They're in menopause or perimenopause and they know it's making things worse. They have a partner who doesn't drink and they're trying to support them. Or they're concerned about their wellness, or they're training for a marathon and they're not drinking. I mean, there are a million reasons why we don't drink. Maybe their mother was an alcoholic and they don't want to go down that path. We need to stop asking people why they don't drink. And we need to stop pushing alcohol on people who are making a decision to not drink. And I think we can also start thinking about how we can support those people, even if this isn't an issue for us personally.
Well said. So well said. And you might be caring about your sleep. I mean, it is a sleep disruptor. There's so many ways we can support. I remember when I was vice principal of McGill University, which the only question you were ever, and even before somebody took your coat, the question you were asked was red or white, and there were no options. And I can remember saying, we have to have options. And there was great opposition. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I love the image of your friend at book club. Beautiful.
Yeah. This goes for organizations too. I do a lot of corporate wellness work, and I work with, managers and in companies who are trying to support employee wellness. And I think it's really important too, if you're looking, if you're trying to create a workplace that feels like a positive, well workplace, to start factoring this in, if you're not already too, into like events that you organize and that type of thing. There's nothing worse than being offered like a juice box as the some kind of a kid's drink. I forget who says that. It was Holly or Laura, or so one of them in their books talks about how they're like given this, like, that was the alternative, right? It's like a kid's juice in a plastic cup, right? Like, we should be offering interesting adult alcohol-free options at events where we are also offering alcohol containing options for adults. It should be easy because as soon as you're carrying a juice box around, people know you're not drinking alcohol, and you're opening yourself up to those questions that really shouldn't be being asked. It's really nobody's business what's in someone else's glass. That's the truth of it. It just doesn't matter. So, okay. Anything we have not talked about, Anne, that you wanted to talk about on this topic?
I think it would be very interesting, when I confronted Gloria Steinem on this subject, and I said, don't you think alcohol is a women's issue? And she said, no, it's food. Went back to her a second time. I said, are you sure? She said, no, it's food. I wonder if she would answer differently today. I think that metabolically and hormonally, we're just so much more at risk than men. And I think that we're loath to hear this. It's been the real equal opportunity. We can drink like men, but actually it does us in much faster. So I think we need to wake up, smell the coffee on this one, and support one another. There's great community out there.
Yeah, there really is. And I want to do that. I want to do that. I've been trying to do that. But I think the women that are asking for help, like I said, are the ones who can more objectively say that they feel like they have a problematic relationship with alcohol. It doesn't matter anymore. It just doesn't matter. If you want to drink less and you're finding it hard, send me an email, send me a DM. I can help you. And I can connect you with resources. I can connect you with things that will make it easier for you to make the change that you know you want to make. And I'm not going to talk about all of that stuff on this podcast, but those resources are out there, and the landscape has changed drastically during the pandemic because the numbers, the drinking percentages have changed drastically. The percentage of women who are binge drinking has changed drastically because of the increased stress on women over the last few years. So you are not alone if you are listening to this and thinking, oh, I am drinking more than 2 drinks a week every week. I mean, I would reckon, Anne, on that. I mean, I don't know what the percentage of Canadians who drink would be that drink more than 2 drinks a week, but it's got to be huge.
Huge.
Yeah. So you're just not alone, and it's not your fault. Like, we were sold a false bill of goods on this, just like we were around tobacco. It is not our fault that we are where we are. But now that we know that this is not what we thought it was, I think it's our responsibility to try to make change in this area. So.
Yeah. And I guess my last comment would be, you're right. It's a feminist issue. I believe it is. And I think it's a matter of taking our power back.
Yeah. And this is not to say, but I want to be really clear. This is not to say that I think this is not affecting men in an awful way, because it is. Obviously, it's a problem. It's just a problem for humans, alcohol. But I do think there is definitely a feminist issue here. And again, as someone who never used the word feminist to describe herself or ever talked about the patriarchy, I feel like I'm doing it a lot lately, but I just don't know how you can argue with that. I find it difficult to see the other side of this, on that point. So, okay, real quick, Anne, I want to talk about your writing classes. So, we talked about this on the last episode. Most people who listen to this podcast know you're my writing coach. Not only have you helped me get to a place where I have almost 2/3 of a nonfiction project completed, but you're now supporting me in this kind of crazy, what shall we call it? I don't even know what to call it. What are you calling it? Adventure?
Adventure.
It is an adventure. I've just started writing a novel, like a fictional novel, and Anne is supporting me in that. And she is an absolute gem of a teacher and just a wonderful writing coach. And she runs writing programs. And that's how I started with the writing a couple of years ago now, is that I joined a program with Anne. So what's the name of your introductory program now, Anne, for people who have never, or it's been a long time since they've done any writing and they want to kind of explore that? What's it called now?
It's called Writing Your Recovery.
Okay.
All women in the course. And most women are recovering from something, largely alcohol, but also food issues, grief, other issues.
Yeah. So I joined that group not really thinking about it as me as being in recovery around alcohol, because it had been many years since I'd had a drink, and I don't consider myself to be in recovery from alcohol. I quit drinking. I don't drink anymore. I'm very happy I don't drink anymore. It's not really an issue for me, but I have been through burnout twice. And what I ended up realizing in the course of the first course with you, Anne, is that what I was really recovering from was modern motherhood. And that ended up being the focus of a lot of what I wrote about. So I guess I just want to be clear. You don't have to be somebody who is no longer drinking or has quit some substance for this course to be a great fit for you. I think everyone is recovering from something. That is the truth of it. And that's really what our stories are about. They're about the things we've gone through and what we've learned from that. So I can't say enough about this course. Do you have another one that's going to be opening up soon? This podcast is going to air. We're recording it at the very beginning of February. It will air either next week or the week after. It's going to air in February, because I think it's really an important episode. So what's your next offering?
March 29th.
Ooh, perfect.
Yes.
Perfect timing. Excellent.
Thank you.
So, how do people find out about the course? Where do they go?
They go to my website, which is my name, and dowsettjohnston.com, and go to workshops, and there it will be.
Perfect. So I'm going to put that in the show notes with this podcast so everybody can find that if they want to. Such a great thing to do, even if you don't feel like you have a story to tell or you're not a writer. I mean, I said this before. I showed up in that first group and I literally said, I will probably never write anything and I will definitely never read out loud. Do you remember that, Anne?
I certainly do.
And now you can't shut me up in that group. So you don't have to be somebody who's a serious writer or who's always wanted to be a writer to join this. If you're a woman in midlife and you're feeling like something's missing and you've been listening to me talk on this podcast about exploring all of the things to try to find what that is, do this. It's so much fun. You'll have a great time. You'll learn so much about yourself. You'll meet other women. It'll feel good. Every week, it'll be something that you look forward to, or every 2 weeks, whatever the schedule is. And like, you're just never going to regret it. So give it a shot. And who knows, maybe it'll be your thing, like it was my thing, which is pretty cool. Okay, Anne, you are the best. I love that you can come on here and talk with such just expertise around all of this stuff. It's so great. And I really appreciate you coming on and helping me talk about this thing that was a scary thing for me to talk about on a podcast episode, because I don't want to alienate people or freak people out or make anyone feel badly about anything. And I think hopefully there's been a hopeful message in all of this, which is we absolutely have the power to change this, both our personal relationship with alcohol and the way alcohol is portrayed in society. And it's actually a really great thing that we're starting to talk about it.
Fantastic. Thank you, Wendy.
You're so welcome. Have a great rest of your day.
You've been listening to Bite Size Balance with your host, Wendy McCallum. As a certified Naked Mind coach, I help busy women like you find freedom from alcohol. If you're starting to question your relationship with alcohol, you'll want to listen to my free 3-part video series where I address the top 3 myths around why you think you need to drink. Sign up now at www.wendymccallum.com/myths. That's www.wendymccallum.com/myths.